All right, so today we're going to do a quick video on how to test the compression of any motor. Specifically, this was done on a 2012 Kia Optima, but this can be applied to literally any car motor. Specifically for my car, I have to take out all of the ignition coils and spark plugs. I don't take out all the spark plugs at once. What I do is leave 3 in, take 1 out, and do the testing. So what you need for my car is you're going to need a 10mm wrench. You're going to need a 5/8 spark plug socket with a long extension. Then you're going to need a compression gauge. I got this one off Amazon like 3 years ago and it works fantastic. And then the end is controlled by your spark plug. So for my vehicle, I have to take out the ignition coils that all have a 10mm bolt here, here. And these are cylinders 1, 2, 3, 4. So I already undid all those, so we can just take out the wires real quick. And that will make my life easy. All right, so I take out all of my ignition coils. 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. Now I can get my spark plugs. So what I'm going to do is just take out 1 spark plug to start, okay? So I'm going to take out spark plug number 1, and then I can test cylinder number 1 for compression. So give me 1 second here. All right. And the way you do this is you remove 1 spark plug, leave the other spark plugs in. Obviously, don't have your ignition coils connected because you don't want the motor to accidentally start. That's not the purpose. You want to just crank it over to test compression. So spark plugs out. Now what we do is we'll put our compression gauge into cylinder 1, leaving spark plugs in the other 3 cylinders so that the engine has normal compression across all cylinders unless there's an issue with the cylinder I'm testing. Okay. All right, so all you do again is you're just going to twirl that down into your spark plug hole, and then I really just twist on the tube really hard to get that kind of seated good, right? Because it's got no rings, so you're just trying to make sure that you get it tight enough that it gives an accurate compression reading. So I have that in there pretty tight. I'm going to leave this set up here, make sure it's zeroed by hitting my release, and then literally you just go attempt to start the car. So again, none of my ignition coils are in, but my other 3 spark plugs are in, and then I have my compression gauge in cylinder 1. So we will be testing cylinder 1 compression. So with the compression gauge in cylinder 1 and the spark plugs in cylinders 2, 3, and 4, I will go ahead and check my compression by trying to start the car. Let her crank a few times. All right, now we'll go check the compression. So I have a pretty good seal in there, and I got about 105 compression on a cold motor. This might not be super tight, but that's sufficient. That's sufficient. I know that my compression's over 100. That should be good. So now we'll go ahead and take this compression gauge out. I already loosened it because it's hard to do on video. And my goal now is to test cylinder 4, because I know cylinder 4 is the one that has a misfire, which tells me that that one's the one that's being checked for compression, because I already checked my ignition coil and my spark plug, and those are both good. So now all we're doing is putting spark plug 1 back in and tightening down. And then we're going to take out spark plug 4, because that's my cylinder that has the misfire that I have a suspicion for low compression. So we'll go ahead and take that one out. And then same thing, you're going to take the spark plug out, you're going to put the compression gauge in, get it as tight as possible, check the compression. Normal compression on a motor, if it's hot, it should be 120s, 130s, 140s, 150s. If it's new car, it could be as high as 160s, 170s. Compression that's starting to go bad is getting near 100, and then compression under like 90, it's not going to run. So that's how you know that you have a bad compression. All right, let's put our compression gauge into cylinder 4. All right, so I now have the compression gauge turned into cylinder 4 really tight. Cylinder 1 was over 100 cold, so if this is normal, it should be about the same, meaning it should be right around exactly where cylinder 1 was, which was about 105. Anything more than like 5% off of each other is bad news. So let's go check it. Same thing, let's let her crank a few times. All right, letting her try to crank, turn her off. Let's check that compression. Yeah, so that's what I had happen yesterday. She didn't even register. And when I let that out, she barely has any pressure in her whatsoever. So she has essentially no compression. And I mean, this thing is tight. It's turned in all the way. And in case you don't believe me, we'll go ahead and check that compression again. So zeroed down, check that compression again. And the reason we're talking about this is because if you watch my video on compression that I'll post later, I can explain what different compression readings mean and what the likelihood of something being bad is, okay? So again, she's registering 0 compression pretty much. Barely anything whatsoever. All right. So we figured out that cylinder 4 has no compression. Cylinder 1 was about 105 PSI cold. What you should do now is check cylinders 2 and 3 as well and write them down. Cylinders 1, 2, and 3, if they're all working right, should be within about 5 to 10 PSI, max difference of 10 PSI different than each other. Honestly, you really want about 5%. And then I already know that cylinder 4 has no compression. But if you were to see, you know, 100, 105, 102, and then maybe 88, that would be more indicative of burnt piston rings or a burnout cylinder, and we'll talk about that whenever I show you guys my next part of this video, which helps diagnose compression issues. All right, so now that we know that cylinder 4 has lost pretty much all compression, let's talk about compression itself. And this may explain what could be going on, and you can kind of figure out what's going on based on this diagram, all right? So this is a combustion cylinder, okay? Piston goes up and down based on your camshaft. Your valves for fuel intake and your valves for exhaust output are controlled by the head and by your timing chain, by the rockers in the head. Then you have your ignition coil and your spark plug. Okay, so piston goes down, fuel and air come in, valves seal. This comes up and forces this to turn into a gas mixture. This will explode if there's enough compression to cause that to go into a gas mixture. Pushes the piston down, and then these open up and exhaust comes out. So basically where you can lose compression in a new kind of motor is mostly 3 places. If your piston rings are burnt because the engine got overheated and your oil wasn't being changed right, or it's just really old and your piston rings are burnt, you'll lose compression. But to be honest, you never fully lose all compression when that happens. Like, I have no compression, so the likelihood of it being the piston rings, very unlikely. Now, if your valve gets bent or stuck open, either your intake or your exhaust valves, now that can cause almost no compression, because basically all the air that you're pushing up is able to come out really fast because this is wide open or this is wide open. So that can cause really, really low compression. Or the other thing is that your head gasket could be blown, meaning that this gasket that sits in between the head and the cylinder is blown. So when this comes up, all the air just comes right out of the side of the cylinder. And that can also cause almost no compression. So to be honest, I think that I either have a bent valve that's stuck open or carbon-filled valves that are stuck open, or I blew a head gasket. Now, my car is never overheated, and I change the oil religiously. So the likelihood of it being a head gasket's low. I honestly think that I have a valve issue. Hopefully that kind of explains compression checking and also the issues that you can have if you don't have compression. So basically it can be open, stuck valves due to carbon or bent or just damaged. It can be bad piston rings and you burnt the cylinder. You can blow a head gasket, and if it's really, really bad, you can blow the entire spark plug out of the spark plug mount, which is really uncommon, but possible. So hopefully this gives you an idea of how to test your compression and also kind of how to start to diagnose it. And then the real test for how to diagnose a low compression motor is a leak down test. And I will post a video on that next.